When Gerald Thompson turned 70, he sat quietly in his small backyard in suburban Ohio, sipping on a lukewarm cup of coffee. The September air was just crisp enough to signal the changing of seasons, much like the changes happening in Gerald's life. His wife, Susan, had passed 5 years ago. His 3 children, scattered across the country, called often but visited less. Gerald had retired from his job as a post office supervisor and now spent his days reading, walking, and gardening. Yet, that morning, something stirred in him. A quiet question lingered as he watched leaves drift from a nearby maple tree. What really matters now? That simple question led to a surprising realization over the weeks that followed. Gerald began writing in a notebook every evening after dinner. He didn't realize at first that what he was scribbling down would eventually become a manifesto for his own peace of mind, a quiet list titled 7 Things That Don't Matter Anymore After 70. It wasn't about giving up. It was about letting go. The first thing Gerald wrote was status. He remembered when status had meant everything to him, his job title, his house, the car he drove, even what others thought about his marriage and family. In his younger days, he tried to impress his neighbors with a fresh paint job or a new lawnmower. But now, nobody really cared what he drove or how perfect his hedges looked. His neighbors had either moved away or didn't know his name. And he realized for the first time that status was always temporary. Now, at 70, he finally felt free to stop playing that game. Whether he wore old sneakers or loafers from Macy's, nobody was watching anymore. He found a kind of power in that invisibility. The second thing he crossed off as no longer important was keeping up with trends. Gerald chuckled remembering how he used to rush to get the latest phone or understand new slang, so he wouldn't feel left behind. But technology moved too fast now, and he didn't care to catch up. When his granddaughter, Lily, tried to explain TikTok to him, he politely nodded and then asked her about her latest school project instead. He found more joy in meaningful conversations than in trying to decode a 15-second video. What mattered was connection, not keeping up. The third thing he let go of was holding on to grudges. Gerald had spent too many years being angry at people who didn't even remember what they had done. He'd held a quiet bitterness against his younger brother, Mark, for decades over a misunderstanding about their parents' will. But recently, Gerald had called Mark and simply said, "I miss you." The relief in Mark's voice was all Gerald needed. At 70, there was no more time for resentment. There was only time for healing. The fourth realization came unexpectedly during a doctor's visit. His doctor, a cheerful woman named Dr. Jensen, reviewed his chart and told him, "You're doing great. But remember, you don't need to look like you're 50. Just be healthy." That day, he realized that physical appearance didn't matter the way it used to. He no longer worried about wrinkles or a receding hairline. His days of impressing anyone with looks were long gone, and with that came freedom. Now, he dressed for comfort. He walked for pleasure. He didn't suck in his belly for photographs anymore. He smiled naturally, and his eyes twinkled with age and wisdom. Next, he wrote about regret. For years, Gerald had played the mental game of what if. What if he had taken that job offer in Chicago? What if he'd traveled more when Susan was still alive? Those questions used to haunt him. But over time, he realized regret was a trickster. It didn't change the past, it just robbed the present. So, he made peace with his decisions. He reminded himself that he had made the best choices he could with the knowledge he had at the time. And when he stopped feeding regret, he found room for gratitude instead. The sixth item on his list surprised even him: possessions. When Gerald was younger, he had worked hard to accumulate things: a big flat-screen TV, fine china, tools he never used, and closets full of coats. But now, those things didn't give him joy. In fact, they made him anxious. So he began giving things away. He donated most of his clothes, passed on some antiques to his children, and started living lighter. Each time he gave something away, he felt a little freer. His house felt roomier. His mind did too. And finally, the seventh thing Gerald released was fear of death. It wasn't morbid, he wrote. It was honest. At 70, he was closer to the end than the beginning. But instead of fearing death, He began to embrace life more deeply. He paid attention to small things, the crunch of gravel underfoot during walks, the way the sun lit up the curtains in the afternoon, the laughter of children playing down the block. Every moment felt borrowed and beautiful. He no longer saw death as a thief, but as a reminder that every breath is a gift. One afternoon, his neighbor, a retired teacher named Helen, invited him over for tea. She noticed a glow in Gerald that hadn't been there before. He was lighter, calmer. They talked about everything: books, family, music. Gerald shared his notebook with her. She read it in silence, smiled, and said, "You need to share this." So Gerald typed it up, had Lily help him post it on a simple blog called After 70, and within weeks, he began receiving messages from people all over the country, men and women in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, thanking him for giving voice to feelings they didn't know how to express. His list wasn't just a personal truth anymore. It became a quiet anthem for many. As autumn turned to winter, Gerald kept writing. Not always lists. Sometimes just thoughts, reflections, and memories. His days were no less ordinary, but they were filled with meaning. One cold January morning, he sat at his window with a blanket draped over his shoulders, a cup of tea in hand, and watched snow fall gently across the street. A small smile played on his lips. He was alone, but not lonely. He had let go of what didn't matter, and in doing so, found more room for what did: peace, connection, and presence. In his final entry for the year, he wrote, "I spent too many years trying to be important. Now I realize it's better to be kind. I used to fear being forgotten. Now I see the beauty in fading softly, like snow melting into earth, unnoticed but nourishing. After 70, what matters most isn't what I have, but how I live. And I live fully right now." And that is how Gerald Thompson, a quiet man in a quiet town, reminded others and himself that aging doesn't mean fading away. It means coming home to what truly matters and letting go of everything that doesn't.